For US soldiers, Vietnam was more than a battlefield. It was a place where the jungle itself felt alive and hostile. Visibility at arm's length, chest-deep monsoon floods, swarming insects, and heat that drained your will all before a single shot was fired. But what truly haunted them was not just the enemy they could see, but the traps, tunnels, and the agonizing uncertainty hidden beneath every step. Why did so many claim the environment was their most feared adversary? The answer changes everything you think you know about this war. Every patrol began with the same ritual. The point man stepped forward, machete in hand, eyes narrowed to a strip of world barely wider than his shoulders. The jungle pressed in from every side, vines and twisted roots closing the path to a tunnel so tight that, at times, a man could reach out and touch both walls at once. There was no horizon, just a wall of green and shadow, broken only by the glint of sweat running down a soldier's neck. Visibility dropped to a few feet. Sunlight filtered through the canopy in thin, shifting beams, never strong enough to dry the ground or the men. Even at midday, the world felt dim, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and rotting leaves. Every step forward was a guess. The ground might be solid or it might give way to a pit. Branches clawed at uniforms, caught on web gear and tangled in rifle slings. Progress slowed to a crawl. A squad that could cover a mile on open ground would sometimes advance less than 6 kilometers in a full day's march. The man at the front, the point, bore the worst of it. His shirt soaked through, boots squelching in mud, arms burning from hacking at the endless undergrowth. Heat lay over everything like a wet blanket. The temperature soared past 90 degrees by late morning, but the humidity made it feel hotter. Some days, the heat index climbed above 120. Sweating offered no relief. Uniforms clung to skin, salt stinging open cuts. Breathing grew heavy, each inhalation thick and slow. Eyes stung with sweat, but wiping them risked missing a tripwire or sudden movement in the brush. The jungle was never silent. Insects droned, birds shrieked, something unseen always moved just out of sight. But the real threat was what could not be seen. Lines of sight ended at the next wall of green, and the mind filled in dangers that might be waiting there. Stamina ebbed faster than ammunition. Muscles cramped, legs grew heavy. Even the strongest men found themselves gasping, their energy bleeding away long before the day ended. The terrain shaped every tactic. Patrols slowed, sometimes halting every few steps to scan for hidden traps or sudden openings in the earth. Every man learned to move with caution, to trust the point man's judgment, and to fear the jungle as much as any enemy. The oppressive heat and the living maze of foliage did not just sap strength, they made every step a test of nerve, and every moment a gamble against exhaustion and the unknown. Rain hammered the jungle, turning trails into rivers and clearings into lakes. By the monsoon's peak, water swallowed the ground, rising past knees, sometimes up to a man's chest. Boots filled with mud, socks twisted, skin softened and raw. In the deepest flood zones, packs floated, rifles balanced overhead, web gear sloshing with river water. The roar of rain on leaves drowned out commands, footsteps, even gunfire. Only the thud of a heartbeat and the slap of water against skin broke through. Beneath the surface, leeches waited. They slipped under collars and cuffs, latched to ankles and thighs, filling boots unnoticed until the burning itch and slow trickle of blood gave them away. Some men stopped to pluck them off, blood streaking their calves, but most learned to ignore the sting. There were always more. Mosquitoes swarmed in clouds, biting through uniforms, leaving welts that festered into sores. Each bite carried the threat of malaria or dengue, sickness that could drop a man as fast as a bullet. The army handed out pills, but their taste lingered, and side effects blurred the line between fever and fatigue. The water itself was a hazard. Fungal infections, jungle rot, and ringworm spread in every crease of skin. Men woke to find their feet blistered and white, skin peeling from days spent soaked. Immersion foot, once a relic of old wars, returned with a vengeance. Some lost toenails, others lost toes. Infections set in fast, and the only cure was dry socks and rest, luxuries no one could afford. Medical records from 1967 list entire squads out of action, not from wounds but from infected feet and legs. In the worst cases, rot climbed to the knee, forcing evacuation and amputation. Constant irritation wore men thin. Sleep came in bursts, broken by the drone of insects and the slap of rain. Even at night, the jungle buzzed, spiders, scorpions, and centipedes sharing foxholes and boots. A man could spend hours picking ants from his pack, only to find them crawling over his skin by morning. Every itch, bite, and sting became a distraction, one more reason to lose focus. The point man pressed forward, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the wall of green. He learned to ignore the tremor in his hands, the slow trickle of blood down his shin, the knowledge that even the smallest wound could be the one that sent him home. Bamboo, so common in the Vietnamese countryside, became a weapon in the hands of skilled engineers. Punji pits started as shallow holes, usually about 2 feet deep and just wide enough for a boot to drop through. The bottom and sides bristled with sharpened bamboo stakes, each one angled inward so that pulling a trapped leg free meant tearing deeper wounds. The stakes weren't just pointed, they were often coated with feces or rotting animal matter, a deliberate act to guarantee infection. Even a shallow puncture could turn into a festering wound in days, and the threat of gangrene or tetanus loomed over every step. Camouflage was an art form. Builders covered each pit with a thin lattice of split bamboo, topped with a layer of dirt and leaves to match the surrounding ground. The cover might hold the weight of a bird or a falling branch, but a soldier's boot would send it collapsing in an instant. Some pits used hinged lids that snapped back into place after the fall, hiding the trap from the next man in line. Resetting was easy. After a pit was sprung, teams returned under cover of night to replace the cover and refresh the camouflage. In some areas, pits lined entire trails, each one a silent threat waiting for the unwary. Soldiers learned to probe the ground with bayonets, but even the careful could be caught off guard. The knowledge that a single step could mean a wound, an infection, or even amputation weighed on every mind. The jungle floor itself had become a weapon, engineered not just to injure, but to haunt every decision, every movement through the endless green. A single scream cut through the jungle, sharp and sudden, drawing every eye and freezing every step. When a man dropped into a punji pit, the injury was often not fatal, but the pain and shock ran down the line like a current. Wounds from bamboo stakes, sometimes coated with filth, meant infection was almost certain. The immediate response was always the same: halt, secure the area, and call for a medical evacuation. But even the act of helping a wounded man carried risk. Rescue teams moved slowly, probing every inch for secondary traps, knowing the enemy sometimes placed pits in clusters to catch those who rushed to help. Casualty evacuation became a daily burden. Reports from 1967 show that more than half of all men wounded by punji pits required helicopter extraction. Not because the wounds were always life-threatening, but because the threat of infection and the risk of losing a limb demanded urgent care. Medical evacuation helicopters circled overhead, burning fuel and time while ground units waited, exposed and tense. Every evacuation pulled men off the line, sapped the strength of the patrol, and forced commanders to rethink their routes and objectives. The knowledge that a single misstep could slow an entire company weighed heavily. Patrols moved with even greater caution, sometimes advancing only a few hundred meters in a day. The jungle itself became an obstacle course, every footstep a gamble. Morale suffered, not from the fear of death, but from the grinding certainty that injury meant separation from the unit, a long recovery, and sometimes never returning at all. The punji pit was not just a weapon against flesh, it was a weapon against momentum and will. A thin wire stretched across the path, almost invisible against the tangle of grass and roots. Sometimes it was fishing line, sometimes stripped telephone wire, sometimes just a length of vine. The wire connected to a grenade, usually an American M26, or sometimes a Soviet F1, tucked into a tin can and hidden in the undergrowth or lashed to a tree at knee height. The safety pin was already pulled. Only the wire, looped around the spoon, kept the firing lever from springing free. A careless step or a brush of the leg would jerk the wire, release the spoon, and start the fuse. With a standard grenade, that gave 4 seconds. The Viet Cong often altered the fuse, shaving it down to 1 or 2 seconds, barely enough time for a startled soldier to register the hiss before the explosion. Some tripwires ran low, set for ankles or boots. Others were strung at waist or chest height, waiting for a rifle barrel or elbow to catch them. On night patrols, even the beam of a flashlight might not reveal the line until it was too late. In the thickest brush, wires tangled with vines and branches, making detection a matter of luck as much as skill. The wire might lead to a single grenade, or it might fan out in a daisy chain. 3, 4, even 6 grenades linked together to multiply the blast. Sometimes the wire triggered a mortar round buried in the ground, or a homemade claymore packed with nails and scrap metal, aimed at chest height along the trail. The logic was simple. A soldier trips the wire, the spoon flies, the fuse burns. With a shortened fuse, the grenade detonates almost instantly. No time to shout a warning, no time to dive for cover. The blast radius of an M26 grenade is about 15 meters. In the jungle, fragments ricocheted off trees and rocks, sending shrapnel in unpredictable directions. A single device could wound or kill several men in close formation. The pressure on patrols was relentless. Every step could be the one that set off a chain reaction. Men learned to scan the ground for unnatural lines, to sweep their rifles ahead of them, to prod suspicious clumps of grass with a stick. But the wires were often buried just beneath the surface, or camouflaged with mud and leaves. At night, the threat doubled. The mind played tricks, seeing wires in every shadow, every swaying branch. Nerves frayed, hands shook, and the pace slowed to a crawl. Tripwire devices did not just threaten lives, they disrupted the rhythm of movement, forced every man to question each footfall, and turned the act of walking into a test of nerve. The knowledge that a single misstep could trigger a blast, that a wire thinner than a shoelace could end a patrol, weighed on every mind. The jungle path became a minefield, and fear was the constant companion. A four-man long-range reconnaissance patrol team moved single file into the jungle as dusk fell, each man separated by a few silent yards. Radios stayed clipped to belts, unused unless the situation demanded it. Even a low murmur could mean disaster, so communication shrank to hand signals and the lightest touch on a shoulder. Silence became a shield. Every step was deliberate. A snapped twig or a careless scuff could draw attention from an enemy hidden somewhere in the blackness. They were miles from help, deep in country that belonged to the night. Darkness pressed in, thick and total, broken only by the faint glow of a watch face or the briefest flicker of a flashlight, always shielded by a palm. The air hung heavy and wet, insects buzzing around sweat-soaked uniforms. Each man's world narrowed to the boots ahead and the ground beneath his own feet. The point man led with a bayonet, probing for wires or the telltale shape of a buried device. Behind him, the others watched for movement, shadows that might be more than wind. Counting paces and listening for the faint rustle of gear was the only way to keep track of each other. The jungle swallowed sound, and sometimes even the radio signal vanished into the trees. Batteries failed without warning. Static replaced voices. When the radio went dead, the team was truly alone. No backup, no rescue, just the hope that command would eventually send helicopters to search for them. A sudden snap cut through the hush. Every man froze, hearts pounding. The point man dropped to a knee, fist raised. No one moved. Seconds stretched. The jungle offered nothing but its endless drone. The team waited for the click of a grenade fuse, the rush of footsteps. Nothing came. They pressed on, nerves tight. Night patrols stretched time until it warped. Each hour dragged, shadows shifting with every step. The mind played tricks, turning every rustle into a threat. Some men later whispered about the feeling of being watched, of something moving just beyond the edge of sight. The jungle hid everything: enemy, traps, even the team itself. Fear became a constant companion, woven into every breath and every cautious step. A voice, barely audible, crackled in the headset. The voice said, "Point, this is rear, hold up." The team halted. Ahead, a wire almost invisible in the dark stretched across the trail. The point man traced it, careful not to touch. He signaled back and the team slipped off the path, hearts racing. In the jungle at night, survival depended on silence, discipline, and luck, holding out a little longer. A slit in the red earth, barely wider than a boot, opened into a world few dared to enter. Beneath the tangled jungle, the tunnels of Kuchi stretched for 120 kilometers, an underground maze carved by hand, shaped by war and necessity. From above, the entrances vanished into roots and clay, camouflaged with the precision of someone who knew exactly how much pressure the ground could take before giving way. The tunnels dropped through 3 distinct levels. The first, about 3 meters down, shielded its occupants from bullets, tanks, and chemical agents. 6 meters below, a second layer offered protection from artillery and bomb shockwaves. In the most heavily bombed areas, a third level plunged to 12 meters, safe from all but the largest American bombs. Narrow shafts and crawl spaces connected each level. some barely wide enough for a man to squeeze through on hands and knees, forcing every movement to be deliberate, every breath measured. This was more than shelter. The tunnels formed a living system. Air shafts, disguised as termite mounds or tree roots, pulled fresh air into the warren. Kitchens vented smoke through winding chimneys, cooling and dispersing it so that from above, nothing betrayed the life below. At the heart of the network, rooms branched into command centers, makeshift hospitals, armories, and sleeping quarters. Entire units could vanish underground, only to reappear miles away, their movements invisible to the Americans above. For U.S. soldiers, the ground itself became suspect. No map could capture the complexity below. No bomb could guarantee destruction. Patrols moved over hollow earth, enemy fighters slipping unseen beneath their boots. Even the bravest hesitated at a tunnel entrance, knowing that one wrong move could mean a fall into darkness, a booby trap, or a silent enemy waiting just beyond the light. The job of entering these tunnels fell to a select few, small, wiry men called tunnel rats. Armed with a flashlight, a pistol, and sometimes just a knife, they slid feet first into the earth. The air was thick with clay, sweat, and old smoke. Every step forward was a guess. The walls pressed in, the ceiling dropped low, and the silence was broken only by the echo of a boot or the click of a safety. The tunnels gave the Viet Cong unmatched mobility. Fighters slipped through hidden doors, appeared behind American lines, or vanished before a counterattack could form. Escape routes branched in every direction, some ending in flooded chambers, others in dead ends rigged with explosives. Ventilation shafts, barely wider than a fist, kept the air moving, even during monsoon floods or bombing raids. American engineers tried to collapse the tunnels with explosives to flood them with water or gas, but the network absorbed each assault and survived. The clay held, the passages rerouted, new sections dug as old ones were destroyed. The labyrinth below was more than an engineering feat. It was a living, shifting battlefield, proof of patience, resilience, and an intimate knowledge of the land. Above, the jungle gave no hint of the maze beneath. From the air, the canopy looked whole. Then it faded into darkness. The final image lingers, the vast green jungle, silent and indifferent, and the knowledge of what moved unseen below. Gunfire ripped through the undergrowth, snapping the column into chaos. One man fell hard, twisting out of sight. Training kicked in, soldiers dropped, rifles up, eyes darting for the source. The jungle swallowed the attackers instantly. The point man's shout, wounded ahead, hung in the air, but the enemy was already gone. The company commander crouched behind a log, radio pressed tight, sweat stinging his eyes. He scanned the brush, mind racing. The Viet Cong had struck and vanished, leaving a single wounded man as bait. Pursue and risk another ambush. Stay and the wounded might die. Every option felt like a trap. Medics crawled forward, hearts hammering, searching for wires and pits. Stories haunted them, men who had rushed to help only to trigger grenades or hidden spikes. The Viet Cong had learned to nest traps around casualties, turning rescue into a deadly gamble. Each medic moved inch by inch, knowing the ground might kill them for caring. The commander cut through the static with orders. Hold position, probe for traps, no movement until cleared. The squad spread out, bayonets tracing the soil, every shadow suspect. A second call, wire at the base of a tree, nearly invisible, froze everyone. The medic's hands shook as he worked, adrenaline burning. The wounded man gasped, blood soaking his shirt. Time was running out, but rushing meant death. The commander weighed his options. Pushing forward risked more traps and more casualties. The Viet Cong doctrine was simple. HT, vanish, let the jungle finish the job. Every step forward could mean another man down, another rescue attempt, another trap. But staying put left the unit exposed to mortar fire, flanking, or worse. Pulling back might mean leaving the wounded behind if evacuation failed. The radio crackled that dust-off was inbound. Estimated time of arrival 10 minutes. Medical evacuation was coming, but the landing zone was 100 meters away, through brush that could hide pits, wires, or snipers. The commander ordered 2 squads to clear a path, moving foot by foot, checking every inch. Each man knew the enemy might have predicted this move, layering traps along the obvious route. The jungle was a chessboard, every move dangerous. A voice tight with fear warned, "Found another wire, do not touch it." The squad froze. Every delay meant more risk for the wounded, more time for the enemy to regroup or disappear. The commander's decision line was razor thin: save the man and risk more lives, or hold back and live with the consequences. The choice played out in seconds, but its weight would last. The jungle closed in, silent and tense. The men waited, hearts pounding, caught between the urge to act and the fear that action could mean disaster. In debrief, the commander would say that you never knew if the next step was your last. Sometimes you just froze, because moving felt like flipping a coin with your life on the line. For many veterans, the war never really ended. The jungle faded, but its shadows lingered in memory and body. Back home, ordinary sounds, a car backfiring, a door slamming could send a man straight back to the undergrowth, heart pounding, muscles tensed for danger that was not there. The habits learned in Vietnam, the constant scanning for threats, the jump at every sudden movement, became part of daily life. Statistics from the Department of Veterans Affairs show that nearly 1 in 3 Vietnam veterans experience symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder after returning home. The numbers tell only part of the story. Hypervigilance, insomnia, and nightmares haunted men who had once moved silently through the mist, alert for every tripwire and ambush. Some could not sleep through the night for years. Others found themselves startled by the smallest things: a child's shout, the flicker of headlights, the rustle of wind in the trees. One veteran described it simply: "You never let your guard down. Not there, not here. I still check the ground when I walk." Another spoke of the invisible weight he carried. "Sometimes I would wake up sweating, sure there was something crawling over me. Sometimes I would wake up screaming." The war's moral injuries ran just as deep. Decisions made in seconds: when to fire, when to hold back, how to treat an enemy, how to save a wounded friend, echoed for decades. Men who had survived Punji pits, night ambushes, and tunnel crawls struggled with guilt for those they could not save, and for the things they had to do to survive. Some withdrew from family and friends, unable to explain why they jumped at shadows or snapped at harmless questions. Others turned to alcohol or drugs, trying to quiet the constant hum of anxiety that never faded. The jungle had trained them to see threat everywhere. Back home, that training became a prison. Veterans found themselves sitting with their backs to the wall in restaurants, scanning crowds for danger, unable to relax even in their own homes. One man recalled, "You come back, and everyone expects you to be the same, but you are not. You are always waiting for something to happen." For many, therapy and time brought some relief, but the scars remained. The VA hospitals filled with men who carried wounds no doctor could see. Some found solace in talking with other veterans, those who understood the constant tension, the memories that surfaced without warning. Others poured their memories into letters, journals, or late-night conversations, searching for meaning in the chaos they had survived. The legacy of Vietnam was not just physical injury, but a kind of watchfulness that never faded. The jungle's grip was strong, and for countless men, the war followed them home, woven into every quiet moment and every restless night. An explosive ordnance disposal technician moved with deliberate care, his boots pressing into the mud just inches from a tangle of bamboo roots. In his hands, a slender steel probe traced the uncertain ground ahead, searching for voids or the faint resistance of a buried device. The probe was simple: no electronics, just a rod and a steady grip. In Vietnam, the most common traps contained almost no metal at all. Bamboo punji pits, whip traps, and spring-loaded spikes could hide beneath a thin crust of earth, invisible to the standard mine detectors carried by United States patrols. The ANPSS-12 detector, designed for metal mines, often gave nothing but false alarms in a landscape where the enemy favored wood, bone, and wire. Detection became a matter of patience and rhythm. Each step forward required a pause, a careful sweep of the probe, a gentle press into the soil. The point man's job slowed to a crawl, his world narrowed to a patch of ground no bigger than a boot. When a probe found soft earth or a hollow, the team halted. Sometimes it was just a pocket of water or a root. Other times, a thin layer of bamboo gave way, revealing sharpened stakes below. The process was slow, exhausting, and never foolproof. Even the most careful search could miss a pit camouflaged with fresh leaves, or a wire hidden in the shadow of a fallen branch. Training manuals urged soldiers to move with discipline, eyes scanning the ground, rifles held high, boots landing flat and gentle. But the tools had limits. The enemy adapted quickly, using fishing line for tripwires, or burying grenades in tin cans that escaped the sweep of a detector. Engineers experimented with new techniques, from using water hoses to wash away loose earth, to deploying trained dogs that could sniff out the faint scent of explosives. Dogs, though, struggled in the thick humidity. their senses dulled by the overwhelming smells of rot and rain. Explosive. Ordnance disposal teams developed their own routines. Before entering a suspected trap zone, they mapped the ground in grids, marking each cleared section with colored tape or chalk. They carried wire cutters, sandbags, and small mirrors to check beneath roots and rocks. When a device was found, the team worked in silence, hands steady even as sweat pooled in their gloves. Disarming a grenade trap meant tracing the wire to its source, isolating the fuse, and cutting the right strand. A single mistake could cost lives. Some traps were designed to trigger if tampered with, secondary charges set to catch the unwary. Despite every precaution, the threat remained. Bamboo left no signature for metal detectors. Tripwires could be reset overnight. The jungle grew back over disturbed ground within days, erasing any sign of danger or safety. Patrols moved slower, sometimes covering less than 1 kilometer in a day. The pace frustrated commanders, but speed meant risk. Every man knew that even the best training and the sharpest eyes could not guarantee safe passage. The explosive ordnance disposal technician finished his sweep, signaling the all clear. The patrol advanced, boots pressing into soaked earth, eyes fixed on the ground. Behind them, the jungle closed in once more, hiding whatever traps might be waiting for the next team. In Vietnam, countermeasures bought time, not certainty. The limits of detection and the ingenuity of the enemy kept fear alive in every cautious step. Even now, the dense jungles of Vietnam swallow the remnants of that war, their silence echoing with unresolved fears. Over 800,000 U.S. veterans live with lasting psychological scars, proof that unseen dangers linger long after the guns fall silent. As modern conflicts push soldiers into new unknowns, the lessons of Vietnam's invisible threats still shape how we train, fight, and remember. Some shadows never fully lift. Share your thoughts below.